Hey, friends. Hello. Welcome to our next episode of Scripting the Book, where I get together with a couple of my friends and we talk about books that have been made into adaptations and give our thoughts on them. So I'm so glad that you guys are here to hang out. I see Cool Gamer hanging out in the chat. I'm going to let my fabulous co host do their intros and let you know who they are. We'll start with Natalie and swing it on back around to me.
Hello, I'm Natalie Locke. I think I got to figure out a name for this, but I just call it flash fiction prowess, which is more of like a skill than a title. But we're gonna go with that. Where I like to genre hop, and I'm also in the middle of editing all my flash fiction. So I do that with my cohort, Chandra Arthur, and we also have a flash fiction prompt book coming out next June. I think is the date. So 2024. Stay tuned. And no matter what level of author you are, it's going to be a challenge for you, a good challenge.
All right. And I am Ben Pick. Every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors as Running to Write on YouTube. This Monday night, I'll be interviewing Nicole of the Blind Sisters on YouTube, and she will be talking, she'll be giving advice on how to write poetry. And then the week after that, I'm going to be starting this new series on writing to the five senses.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's going to be good.
Yeah. Especially
All
with
right.
a whole bunch of Thanksgiving things going on.
Good luck. But it'll be great to watch later, so I'll be looking forward to it. I am Nia, the Vixen of Fiction. You are here on my channel. I write under a pen name, but I also write under NV James, Vixen of Fiction. I've got some cozy fantasy, contemporary fantasy coming up, so I'm very excited about that. They're going to be short stories in a series. So you can look forward to that. And you can catch me live. I stream on Tuesday nights at 7:30 over on YouTube, or here on YouTube, and over on Twitch. I stream on Mondays and Fridays in the middle of the day. So you can hang out with me there, ask me questions. I love to talk about world building and all things of many genres because I'm a notorious genre hopper. So we're going to get right into the story we did Wild. And we read the book, watched the movie. We're going to find out first because we're going to discuss the book first. Everybody read there. Were there any DNFs? Any DNFs? All right. So
Oh,
everybody's good on read it all the way through. Is this first time readers? First time for me. Second time for Natalie. All right. And first time for Ben. Cool, cool. So let's get into how we felt about the book. Did anybody dislike? Neutral? Like?
Neutral like.
Yeah. And anyone love? Natalie loved it. All right. So we're gonna let you start. Natalie, why did we love this?
I definitely love this story, or like to love, because it is a just reading about someone who is like making the poorest decisions of their life, and how something just clicks for them, and they're like, I gotta change, I gotta do something different. This is not that I've ruined like everything in my life. And just seeing them on that growth of not even just, because at first you kind of get a feeling of like running away from problems, but it's more of like when you're isolated, you're left to your own mind a lot, and you kind of have to
Mm.
face them, have to work through them, and such. And I just thought that that was really cool. Like I love stories about resiliency where someone, they could have just given up, but they didn't. And I think that's why it resonates with me is, there's going to be hard stuff and sometimes you cause it, but you can work through it.
Yeah. And Ben, you were a neutral to like. What did you enjoy and what kind of like threw you off a little?
Okay, cut me off because it's going to be really sorry. Cut me off when I go too long because this will be a really lot to say. But through, as far as I can remember, there are only 3 books that I've DNF'd. One of them is the book that this gets compared to, which is A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. I have tried as a kid to read it. I've tried as an adult to read it. It's just too boring for me. It reads like an IKEA manual. And this book has the opposite problem, where it is all, like Natalie said, we're all inside of Cheryl's head. And I like the beginning where she recognizes that she wants to be better and she goes on this hike. And as we learn more about her, she is the driving force of this novel, and I liked her less and less. And so that kind of impacted my overall enjoyment of the book. But to counter, so going along with that, well, this is going to be pretty morbid, but I think this book has an unofficial kill count because I did a deep dive into this based on a theory, and while there are only 15 recorded deaths on the PCT officially, there's a whole bunch of like unofficial missing hikers, and a lot of them in recent years have said like, I did this because I read Wild, and so I decided to do the PCT. And
Oh,
yeah, and because Cheryl went into the PCT with no experience and she did like everything wrong at the start, she didn't test any of her equipment, like it sets the mindset that you can succeed even without any preparation. And even if you go on the PCT and you do prep for it, you train, you test all of your tools, you buy all the right tools to begin with, even then it is still extremely dangerous and very easy to just get careless and make a mistake that, you know, costs you. So
yeah. I want to talk about that a little bit more because that is
sure.
something that that really came up as I was reading. And I could see this as I was reading it, and then you see it again when we watched the movie.
Mhm.
But in the book, I was a lag for me because she is a character that you want to root for her, but then you do see her doing these things that you're like, oh, honey, come on, come on. I really liked the relationship that she had with her mom. It almost, and I'm like, so growing up, my relationship with my mom was dicey. It's good now, but my mom was a very strict single parent after my father passed away. So I'm like, oh, this mom, she's like rainbows and sunshine and all good things. And I'm thinking, is she really like this, or is this how, because she's passed away, is this how we're remembering her? Because it's almost like she can do no wrong. But I can't fault that, I don't think, because I think anyone who's had a parent pass away, if you had a good relationship with that parent, you do just kind of like push away. There was bad stuff. So, and if anybody ever wants to talk about it, you do prefer to talk about the good things. So as someone who had a single parent and then had a one parent who passed away, I just kind of thought, wow, this is very rainbowy. But if that's her experience, that's, you know what I mean? This is her telling this story. So there
I
are things
did
that
like
mhm,
how she took a little ownership that she was a bratty teenager and stuff, you
yeah,
know? I did like that aspect. It wasn't like, oh, we were best friends. It was like, uh, my mom was doing the best, and and really the only thing she blamed her mom for was like things being tough because
yeah,
they had to leave her dad. That was
Mhm.
it. Like, but personality wise for the mom, no, apparently she was an angel.
yeah. Mom was too good to be true. I'm like, wow. But I there's something sweet about remembering a parent that way, but also as a reader, you kind of get to like, really, was she this perfect? Perfect, except for marrying the bad dad.
Right.
Other than that, she was like pretty much perfect. Um, so it was definitely a like for me. She did irk me at times, and this is just a thing that I have with characters. Sometimes I'm like, You're doing too much, or you really ought to know better." And some of that is addiction, and some of that is not knowing how to handle grief. And then there's also, you know, this moment when her mom's about to die and she leaves to go find her brother, And I'm just like, oh, that there are things that pull me back in, because that would just be impossibly tough. Like, you go to do this thing and then you come back and you miss the thing that you desperately want to be there for, and what that would actually do to somebody mentally and emotionally. So there, so I was, it's got me solidly in the like. I really did like this book. That, and the beginning of it, the way it started is just like when she loses the shoe and that whole situation. It's just like that. I'm like, yeah, okay, we're in this. Let's go. But I like that they told her story, her past story, up front, so you know why we're doing this thing, why we're going into this journey. It was nice to get that story laid out. And honestly, I thought I would like to just get that story. Like, the that in and of itself could have been its own novel, in my opinion. I'd like to get the mom story, even though she seemed a little too. I want to get the mom story from the mom's perspective, because she's like, yeah, we weren't. It wasn't all. I wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. Let me tell
By
you.
the way, this was a memoir. Like, as much as, like, at the end of the day, this someone actually made these choices. And the thing is that when you write, there's sometimes a tendency to embellish. So I'm wondering if it was actually worse than it actually was, and she's trying to heal and not make it worse when she writes it down, or if it was actually better. And but she had to make it seem like she was in a rougher patch or something. I'm just curious about that.
Or she's changing the story a little bit to make it seem better. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so when she then, so she has these traumatic things happen. She ends up, leaving her marriage and just really tanking her life in a lot of ways. And she goes on this, when she goes on this journey, it's like what you were saying, Ben, you're not ready for this. Like, the shoe's not fitting. The monster is a character in and of itself.
The gas with
The gas.
with the stove, because she didn't even
How?
try it before she went on it. And there was one specific scene where she wakes up with the water, like her water bottle that was pressed up against her body that froze. Like, she bought a tent that wasn't rated for the temperatures that she was
Yeah,
going to be traveling in.
absolutely not. And so you see her like doing all, but she's able to be successful. And as we go through the book, we see people who have done this before, who are well trained, who turn around. They're like, I'm going back, that's it, or I'm only doing it for this amount of time because the weather's going to turn. These are people who know, and yet she no, I'm not going to say she weathers it with no problem, but it, like you were saying, it gives people, like, I feel like it's giving this false sense that you can do this too. Just grab
Yeah,
that backpack, go on down to the outdoor shop and get your things and go. And I'm like, just the walking with a monster on your back in the wrong shoes, 10 minutes, I'd have been like, no.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I'm a fitness
And
instructor,
in the
and I'm
book,
thinking
she
absolutely not.
struggled. She struggled so hard. Like, it was like a few paragraphs talking about how hard it was
Mm-hmm.
to just put Monster on the first time. And then when she gets dropped off at the cover and the people just set it on the ground, she's like, oh God, how am I going to get this on again? Like, I felt that. But I mean, I think there's how hiking is a metaphor. I really think the way she tackled hiking is the way she tackled life. It's, I've made this decision and I made it worse for myself, but I'm still going to fight through. And so, and it's, she, she hadn't learned in life up to that point, or even on the PCT, of do some preparation, like do some
Mhm.
think about it and stuff. Though I will say she did think she was doing okay. She had the book. She was talking to the people who sold the stuff to her, but I guess she hasn't bought stuff from like dealerships before and didn't realize, hey, they might make a commission or something, you know? Like,
Yeah. So she turned herself into a liability because she didn't recognize her own limitations. And not only that, but not only does that put her own life in danger, but then all like the first responders and people,
Mhm.
random people driving by who would come to help, that potentially puts their lives at risk too in trying to either help her or find the body. I mentioned before how there were a couple of hikers who read the book and decided to go on this hike, or they were experienced hikers and they got inspired to do the PCT. And every year there are people out there still trying to like search the woods and find out what happened to whomever. So
Yeah.
even if you are a lone person walking through the woods, you aren't actually alone.
Yeah.
yeah, I will say, so I agree that her book should at least have a disclaimer in it of like, I did everything wrong or whatever. But at the end of the day, the people who are inspired by the book to go do it, they're they have their own minds, their own autonomy. Uh, I don't want to put everything on the person, because the thing is,
Yeah.
we should be making our own decisions. And not
Yeah.
once did she say go, but I do believe she could have had a disclaimer of, I don't, this is how you don't do it, or something
Yeah.
like that,
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and
That.
worse is that it seemed like she kind of criticized Greg, who was the one hiker who really knew what he was doing and recognized the dangers of going forward through the snow,
Yeah.
and decided to come back. Or he like, I think it was different in the movie, but he either went around the snow, he hitched a ride to do that and then hike later, or he just gave up on later on he ends up giving up altogether. And the way that she wrote those moments, it made it seem like she was looking down on an experienced person who recognized the danger and decided, I'll come back next year, or I'll come back when the conditions are safer for me to go forward.
Yeah, and what was the woman? I think her name was Stacy. Later on in the book, same situation where as soon as the weather turned cold, all of a sudden you see that she would, because they meet together in groups at times and then they spread out and go about their way, and they'll be like, let's just meet up at the whatever the next hostel, the next small town or whatever. And so one of the women that she meets, and I want to say her name is Stacy, but I'm not really sure. But they had met up. They'd been together, I think, a day or two before. The weather turned, it got wet and started getting cold. And then as she's walking, she sees her coming back, and she's like, that her stuff got wet, her clothes got wet, and she's not ready for the weather. And so she's gonna leave and get on the bus and meet later or something like that. And she's able to just keep going. And so there's this sense of how is she able to not, I don't want to say outsmart or outwit, but how is she doing better than the experienced people?
I honestly think,
I
10
think
points
it's
for
part
sheer
of,
dumb luck.
is that just part of
yeah,
that? I'm just gonna go and
it's
do it.
dumb
I'm
luck.
just gonna not stop, not
Like,
knowing that I should turn around maybe.
it's dumb luck, but also I think it's just she seems like the type of person that isn't living unless she's struggling. I don't think she's ever in her life experienced um living. She's always been surviving. And
Mhm.
that's probably, I feel like that her entire life has been that. Like, even when she had it good, she self sabotaged,
Yeah.
you
So
know?
she's never, in her real life, she never really had the luxury to just say, "Oh, this is hard. I'm just gonna go do the easy thing until the hard thing is not as hard anymore." She
Eh,
just sees, "Oh yeah, these other people have to turn around, but it's hard, so I'm just gonna hard is what I do. So let's just keep going."
But there's a difference between like hard and overcoming an obstacle and actively continuing through something that is dangerous and
Dangerous. That's the
potentially
part.
like life
Well,
threatening.
and that's what I think is her struggle. Like, she doesn't know the difference, because for her it's always been hard. And so she
That's fair.
doesn't, I don't think she differentiates, at least at the age she is in the book. Hopefully, because she has grown up, she's got 2 kids, she's married now. I hope that she's making better choices and stuff, and is not like, and she was able to work through a lot of the self-sabotage that she had before.
Oh, when we get to the spoiler section, I have thoughts on that.
All right. Well, let's
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead and
I
move
kind of
on
already
to that.
jumped into that.
We do it's mild spoilers. I tell everybody, you know, that we're going to talk about the book. So we're not going to tell you like everything that happens, but you're going to know some things. Let's go to the movie. So was anybody a dislike on the movie? Neutral? Like? And love? Yes. All right. So I'm going to start this one because I always let you guys go first. So I'm going to take this one. I'm a like because I thought Reese Witherspoon did a great job. Acting is always a part of what makes something likable. She did a great job. I think the contrast of her with Monster, because she's already so small, man, oh man, it just made Monster look like an absolute monster. These are all things that I really liked. I didn't realize I was going to appreciate this, but I did like the condensing of the story with the characters that we did get. I think everything came across that needed to come across. There were things that I thought could have been clearer as someone who watched the movie first and then read the book. I hadn't intended to do it that way, but that's the way when you get a migraine, that's the way it ends up going. So I ended up watching first. And so there were things I didn't understand the significance of St. Patrick's Day and why are we here? Because it told it more in a flashback as she's going through the journey. So there were things that took it out from being a love, and not that those flashbacks were bad, but just that without the full context, there were a lot of times where I was like, what is this about? Is she going to tell me, you know? And then she's just going on. She'll have a flashback of something and you're just like, what was that? Oh, but we're just moving on to the next thing. And I'm like, I needed to know what that was. And not to compare it to the book, but after I read the book, I was like, oh, there were several things where I was like, oh, that's what that was. So the movie, I thought, though the flashbacks were placed nicely, I feel like they could have been a little bit clearer on what the significance is, what is going to this pub on St. Patrick's Day. What is the full significance of it? So there were things where I thought that it could have been clearer, but I thought she did a good job. There were parts in the movie where I was definitely like, this is dangerous. Like, and I don't know, I definitely got that from the book too, but because I saw it first, I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Do not be a woman doing this by yourself. Not because a woman shouldn't be able to do it, but because when she meets up with the two guys, every time she hitchhikes, like literally, I felt like a mom being like, no, do not. And it always
There
turned
was
out
a lot of creepy vibes and everything, but I am glad there was non-creepy vibes too with other people. It wasn't just creep.
yeah. So it was, and I mean, and honestly, it could be anybody. I'm not saying just because she's a woman. That could be anybody. Anybody could do anything to you when you're isolated by yourself, and the only accountability that you have is that someone saw your name in the little checkpoint box, and then if they don't see your name anymore,
Right.
that's it. You know, and once a month you're going to pick up a package at the next stop. So that's the only, you could be missing for days, weeks, months potentially before anyone knows that you're actually missing or that there's actually a problem. And to me, that just visually seeing that
But
just
she actually had people
like,
at home sending her stuff. Like, there's people
yeah,
who probably do that and like don't have anyone really checking up on them or waiting for a phone call or something. You know?
Yeah, but
yes,
even then, like her plans changed and they went, days and weeks without actually interacting with each other. So, there would definitely be a delay. And my understanding, so slight caveat to that. This entire book took place in the 90s, but I think, like I said, in doing some of my research, allegedly 70% of the PCT is cell phone accessible. and I think there is a little bit more GPS related assistance, so that can sort of help prevent people from getting lost, or if an emergency comes up, it's easier to send out an SOS.
Today versus now.
Today,
Versus
now
back
versus
in the
when this
90s.
book took place. Yes.
Yeah. So what put you you were at a neutral, Ben? What put you at a neutral for this one?
I liked how streamlined the book was. I do still kind of have issues with the ending for both the book and the movie, but my biggest concern. So, Nia, you raised how amazing the mother was, and yes, it's through rose-colored glasses, and yes, she was a kid going through this entire experience, but we still got so much more depth in the book with the mother, and like every scene with the mother until the very end, you don't get any emotional depth. It's just like the mother sort of swaying and humming, and like you can picture angelic music, and it's the start of like every single action movie where some hero has a wife or a girlfriend and she doesn't really say anything, but she's just kind of there, and then like, oh, something bad is about to happen. But it kept replaying like the exact same. It was different moments with the exact same emotional pull, where nothing after especially at the first time this happens, like it doesn't add anything by having those scenes. And it just kind of like there were a lot of little details that just kind of wore me down, so that the movie, it was definitely faster than the book, but it felt like it didn't contain the same message as I got from reading the book.
And how about you, Natalie? I like that we were on a range this time.
Yeah. Leave it to me to pick like decisive books. Sorry if y'all can hear anything in the background. My daughter brought her hamster to my parents' house, and the hamster's awake right now in the middle of the day, running on the wheel. So cool. So I like to love the movie, and I think it's because I read it, and I think I read it the first time, then watched the movie. And this movie, I think also for me, this is what kickstarted Reese Witherspoon's book club and her production company that does all these now like female driven stories. So this was kind of like the turning point, and I think that's probably another reason why I like it a lot. But I watching the movie, I understood from a cinematic point of view of why we were getting the same clips, and because they were trying to give you flashes to keep you engaged of what's in the past that made her go on this trip, and like, and what's going to happen, like what has gone on in her life, and because she hints at it, going, "I've seen some bad things" or something, like. The things kind of suck or whatever, and you're like, okay, what happened? And then you see, oh, she got pregnant, and then and stuff. Sorry, some spoiler and stuff, and you're like, oh, and she's an addict. Oh, and like, so it starts to become like when you watch it without reading, you're like, oh, and this, oh, and this, oh, okay, and this too. Oh, sure, why not? Let's add this also. And then, but it's definitely captivates you. To me, even that opening scene of pulling the toenail, I was like, I've seen Saw, I've seen Hostel, I've seen all these things, and I'm like, ah! And I think it's because that could actually happen versus like Saw and Hostel. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to get kidnapped and tortured. But that you're like, oh god, the wrong pair of shoes.
Yeah. Where other things, it's like it's just gross. I don't want to see it. This like gave you those little goosebumps because you know it could happen. You could almost feel it, and it's like,
yeah. I mean, every single one of us, we may not have hiked for 3 months straight, but every single one of us have walked way too much in one day in it, like the worst pair of shoes, and dealt with just a tiny bit of soreness and comparatively.
Fun story about that, but Oh, I can tell later.
No, go for
Anybody
it.
who
Go for it.
doesn't know, Ben runs a lot
Yeah.
and deals with these same issues.
No toenails ripping off, but yeah. So there's a story from when I was a kid at 8, and I was in the Washington State, where apparently I hiked with my mom the Olympic Ridge, which is like a 25-mile hike. I don't know how much of that we did. I don't really remember any of the events, but you know, it must have been over 2 days, because I can't imagine hiking even half that and then, you know, turning around and going back in one day. So it must have been over 2 days or something like that. But yeah, so I have hiked parts of the PCT and parts of the Appalachian Trail before. So this seems like it would be right up like my interests.
Isn't the Appalachian Trail like a lot more established and like pretty clear cut where paths are compared to the PCT?
I think
The place
that there are definitely parts where, yes. Yeah, there are definitely parts where it is very clearly labeled.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a cousin who hiked the AT. And,
but we're talking like maybe a day hike at most. So barely on the trail for, you know, 7-8 miles.
Yeah, and I've only ever done day hikes with small children, so there was no way we were doing more than a day hike. But I've done in Virginia and in North Carolina, and it's lovely and nice, and nothing like what she did.
No, because there's times even in the movie I'm like, how does she know where she's at and everything? And I'm assuming the movie actually did film on the PCT, like certain spots.
Probably.
Most likely.
I would think so. So.
Oh, and sorry, one other thing I forgot about the movie. So I don't think this was a detail in the book, but in the movie, she is writing in the logbook. She's also writing down like famous quotes, and she would say who the author is, and then she would put her name under it, which is 100% like a Michael Scott from The Office move.
Yes.
And
so and me, Emily Dickinson, and me.
Like.
So let's go ahead.
I definitely took it as like she's going on this journey and these thoughts are coming in her mind. And so it's like, it's almost like she's not alone through literature, you know? I took it as almost like a metaphor a little bit.
Yeah, I as add-ins go, that one I kind of thought was kind of cool, except for I would have preferred her not to, it did seem like she was saying written by like Emily Dickinson and me, but I would have preferred it to be like, I'm writing this and here's a quote from Dickinson or something like that. But
yeah, like if she did her name first and then open quotations quote.
Yeah, that's what I'm quoting today. Let's go ahead and get into some comparisons. How do you think it came across from
not much on world building. I mean, 90s wasn't that far off. It was only 20 years when this movie was made. It still feels like it's 20 years, but it's not anymore. But the world building I felt was just fine because they filmed the parts of the PCT. You've got the 90s feel with the attire, even just the changes of Reese's makeup and hair for when she was younger. I thought that I felt it. It's funny how you just throw bangs on someone, you're like, oh yeah, they're younger. But the characters I actually thought were good, because like some of the characters she meets when she's hiking, like the hobo rider guy.
Oh, the hobo rider was the best.
Yeah, the biker gang that's riding in a station wagon and getting like, I can tell you the people who played the creeps did it a little too well.
I was scared for her. Ben, I saw it. I saw it. How could you not? Because my senses were heightened. So there was a little flicker in the background right after that happened. And I didn't know where Ben saw the flicker, but I saw the flicker because when all I'm looking for is where are those dudes? I don't I don't trust the one dude, and I feel like the dude that he was traveling with knew he was traveling with a creeper. And he said, I felt like in that moment that the dude who I thought was going to be the creeper initially, because he's making those comments, dudes, don't make these comments. Nobody asked for them. Okay, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound just weird when you're
And
alone.
I wanted her to have more
Body. It's just
more
like
power. I
Or more
wanted her to have more power because she was just like, oh, thanks and stuff. Like she got small real quick, and
yeah, that was just that was scarier than the farmer, in my opinion.
or the snake, or
the snake. The animals, honestly, the animals didn't scare me. And it's funny because I talk about this with my kids when we talk about the apocalypse movies and stuff. It's honestly, it's not even the animals or the elements and stuff that would scare me. It's the other people. Like my concern is the other people. I feel like
the worst
animals.
part of The Walking Dead isn't the zombies.
It's not the zombies, you know.
yeah.
100. It's not the zombies. Like you can deal with them, and if people would get together, we could deal with that. But they don't. People break off, and it's craziness. So honestly, when she ran into those two guys, and I feel like anybody running into those two guys would have just been that was the scariest for me. And I feel like the first guy who actually I feel like saved the day when he called his friend back, I feel like he wasn't okay. Had he not made those comments about her in the beginning, I wouldn't. That's what really got my alerts kind of like heightened, you know. And it was him, but it was the other guy who was quieter and just staring at her who was the actual problem. And I feel like this is a side. They're total side characters, but I'm like, if you know your friend is a little off kilter, why are you going to make those comments? Like, don't even get it in his head, okay?
And I
Or I
thought
don't know.
in the book it was the guy that made the comments came back.
In the movie, the guy who made the initial comment was the guy who called the friend back. It was the second friend. I think they were both making. I thought they were both making comments, but the other guy, or maybe he cut him off and just kind of like laughed it off. I know he said we're just kidding. But that was the guy who called him back and said, "Hey, get back over here."
Yeah, but in the book, I feel like at least in one of them, I thought though that it was the comment guy was also the show up later guy.
Yeah. I'll go back and watch, but their whole I don't know, something about their scene, that scene, it just scared me. I didn't like them. I wanted her to get away from them as quickly as possible. And it's weird because you're out there alone and it's like there's courtesy and there's etiquette, and then what are you doing out of a fear reaction? Sharing the water pills to diffuse the water. Like how much of this is like, yeah, this is just what we do for each other versus I'm scared that if I say no, that's going to give them in their mind a reason to come at me. Just the whole thing. Throw the whole thing away. I didn't 10 out of 10 did not like it. I think it definitely made its point. But I definitely saw the flicker in the shadows because I was on high alert at that point.
So yeah, point of clarity, after the scene that we're talking about, it's Reese walking through the woods and it's getting dark. And so I think I pointed out because it's like a blink and you miss it moment, but I think it's either a light fixture that's hidden behind, some kind of thing to obscure it so that way we could at least see the actor, or it might have just been a crewman who was just kind of standing there. So
yeah.
it literally is just a blur that I sent out to everyone where you see like this really slight flash and it looks like a human shape right there. So that's what we're talking about with the flash.
Yeah. And my phone is trying to talk to us. I'm not calling.
Still on
it. No. It's like I don't know what I said or what one of us said that made the phone.
We haven't talked about the characters. Did y'all agree with me on the world building? I mean, it's not like quintessential 90s to me. I mean, they even had payphones.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, that looked exactly like how I thought. I feel like
Oh,
when
Jerry
she got
Garcia
the
dying.
yeah,
There was timely stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, that definitely time stamped it for me because I literally when I heard that Jerry Garcia died, I was like, oh, that's it put an exact date on it for me. And I was like, okay,
I
that's when
feel
this is. 'Cause
like,
I was like, is this late 80s? This is 90s. This is late
yeah.
80s. There's no cell phones at all. Nobody has a cell phone. So I'm trying to like date range it like where are we based on the cars and the fact that nobody's using a cell phone. But I don't feel like it's that old. Um, dating myself there. But yeah, when she put the Jerry Garcia and then the other person who had also just died, who was it? Kurt Cobain, who had also
Kurt
somebody
Cobain
else.
I
was
don't think that was in the movie
No, oh, somebody else had died. Or
because this takes
something else.
place in '95.
Yeah, 95. I forget what else they mentioned in the book, but it just totally it's something she's talking about. But yeah, I was like, that just really brought the date. I was like, that's exactly when that was.
Oh,
one of my pet peeves about the movie, though, is that they did show her injured, like her feet, the rub marks on her body, and stuff like that. But honestly, what killed me is that I feel the book did a better job of talking about how skinny she got. They didn't like Reese Witherspoon was already skinny,
Yeah,
and they didn't like. I mean, I wouldn't wanted her to lose weight, but at the same time, we're trying to the health of the actor is competing
yeah,
with like how
right.
true it is. I didn't want her to get like God, what's his he was the Batman
Oh,
originally.
Nolan. Yeah, for the
oh yeah,
machinist.
Yep, yes, the Machinist, Christian Bale in the Machinist. I didn't want that
Sorry, not
level, but
Nolan.
at the
Nolan.
same
I'm
time,
sorry.
hey, we got there. Our powers combined, we would make a great trivia team. But at the same time, I wanted to see some other physical attributes here of that she's been hiking and stuff. Like, I mean,
hmm
someone living off trail mix and cold mush, they
yeah,
would look a certain way.
yep. I like the way that I thought it was fine that they narrowed it down with the siblings because uh there really was no need. You got the point across with the brother. I feel like that there was so much more in the book though, but I felt like it was fine. The characters that were eliminated, and there were things that I'm glad that they still put in. The scene with the little boy and the old lady, they changed them up a little bit, but at the alpaca, I really like the meeting animal moments. I don't know if that's something about me, but anytime she met an animal, even when she's walking and she meets the snake, and when she's in the tent and the little creepy crawl, all of those things, I'm like, these are very,
Even though it was
I
a
love
glimpse with all the frogs on her and stuff,
Yep.
and
this. Yes.
like it
So
to me, those heightened the you're in the wild, honey. Like,
yes, it felt real.
And we had
Yeah,
the
because I'm
fox
like,
that was the mother's like animal or something.
yeah, that was so cute. And she kind of like chasing after it. So they're just yeah, the world building, the way that they executed, I think that they did fine. Like my only thing is that some of the flashbacks, I wish that they'd have been a little bit more clear because you do get all
yeah,
of that context once you read the book. Um,
yeah, it's
just
not
for
their
how
flashbacks were enough to keep you watching because you're like, what's going on? But a good flashbacks in a movie will wrap it up at the end to make you fully understand what it is. Like the machinist, as we already described, kind of did the same thing. There was a little bit of flashbacks, and then you understood, oh, that's why he's like punishing himself. I wonder if that was a book. That'll be a good one. But then, but in the movie this time, even watching to the end, some of those flashbacks don't have the weight that they need.
yeah,
Yeah, it's only when you read the book that you realize what those scenes were meant to convey.
yeah, I totally agree. Let's go ahead and get into some of the changes. We can do just general changes that you liked and didn't like, and your favorite changes. I I would say I didn't mind that there wasn't the stepdad, but I think that the stepdad put a lot of things in context, like how did they get the
Yeah.
house, if things were so bad. I really enjoyed hearing, you know, that process of the story and understanding where the house and the property and the horse, because it's like she's got such hard life, but they had horses and they had property and they had a house. So it's like, but how you know what I mean? Like, what is the context? Is this all from the
Stepdad would
bad?
have explained some of the affordability there, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. How about you guys? Any of the? I'm gonna switch up the banner too. To
Yeah.
I mean, I talked about how she should have been skinnier if we're
Mm,
or some way. They could have she didn't have to lose weight. What they could have done is done makeup and darken the grooves of her natural body to
yeah,
make it appear that she had lost weight because
and
she's
they could
skinny enough.
Yeah, they could have given her a little bit maybe thicker clothing when the first time she puts on Monster and she's in the room, she just looks so small putting them on,
Yeah,
putting that big backpack on there. And then there's things that you can do with the makeup to under the eye with the cheekbones, and then
exactly.
letting Reese be her natural thin self would have shown us a bit of a change that could have
Uh-huh.
emphasized that because she was
Um, yeah. I'm kind of glad they. I feel like they actually made the drug use worse than it was in the book, but I'm kind of glad they did that because it we talked about how almost hiking the PCT unprepared is almost glorified. I'm glad at least the drug use wasn't glorified. We don't have
Yeah.
people going, yeah, I'm gonna try that. So I feel like that is a good change if they kind of made it worse and it showed this like, oh, I'm just taking in uh I'm not like injecting it. The next thing is I'm injecting it, but I'm not doing it all the time, and that like it's just the excuses and how they pile up.
yeah.
Mhm.
But that was a nice add-in how they were smoking it and then they were snorting it, and she's like, "Surely I'm never going to inject it." And then, boom, there she is. How
Mhm.
about you, Ben? What are the changes that stood out for you?
Yeah, so one of the changes that I really like from the movie is that it took out my least favorite scene. So I don't know how far we want to go into spoilers, but
Yeah,
as
we can do
far
spoiler.
all right. So within the book, she is basically at the end of the PCT and she goes into town, she has a fun night, and she's like going to a club, she meets the guy or whatever, but while she's so used to being alone that she decides to step outside the club and she just meets some random guy on the street, goes into his van, and then tries opium. Like and that kind of negates like every
Uh,
accomplishment that she had made towards getting her body clean, towards making better decisions. Um, and that's in the book where, and yes, she does spit out the opium, but opium is basically just heroin light. And it kind of, I don't know, it makes me think that yeah, she went on this great trip and she learned a lot about herself from it, but she will very like, because she made that decision, I can easily see her slipping back to the person that she was before the hike, which kind of makes the whole, oh, I finished the PCT and now I have, you know, a year later I came back here with my boyfriend and then we got married and then I had two kids and this that, and the other, but it makes those moments seem less ingenuous because she went back to making the same decisions, the selfish decisions that she made before the PCT right at the end. So by taking that out of the movie, I think it made her seem like she, gets to get that kind of happy ending. And I can see a transition of um, her recognizing her own faults and resolving to do better, I guess. In the movie version, whereas in the book, it didn't have that sort of comeuppance moment.
yeah, where I think for me, it felt a little bit like in the book that she could go through all of this and that she's had this growth and this learning. But if she wanted to do this again, that wouldn't be a problem. And I would
Mhm.
like, is that true? So taking that out in the movie is probably a good choice because you don't see that kind of like gray did she learn from this?
Yeah.
Did she see that that was actually a problem, or was it only the emotional part that she thought was a problem, but actually doing the opium's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
made that a little bit gray, where I think the movie take it, if you take that part away, it just makes it a little bit more solid that that was then, and here we are moving forward now.
So interesting fact. The uh thing that I liked was that I liked they explained why she chose Strayed, and I kind of like that symbolism. That choose your name, but at the same time, I feel like it also set her up to not have any guidance, and probably why she also went downhill. Um,
Mm.
but her daughter, by the way, played her younger self in the movie.
Mm.
By the
Oh,
way,
that's
Nice.
the real daughter. So, yeah,
And
I'm trying
so
to
you,
find out. I thought in the book she said she met her husband on the PCT.
no, I thought that she brought him back so that they did it together,
yeah,
or they did like a trail of it. Like she
Uh,
yeah.
brought
I
him to
thought
the bridge that she finished on, the bridge of the gods or whatever.
yeah, because the guy that she married is a filmmaker. Go figure. Um, and they got married in '99.
Mm.
Huh, I'd be interested to know if they actually met on the trail. Was he actually doing it? But yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that she had brought him back as well.
And Natalie, I have a question. So she changed her name into Strayed because she strayed from her husband. Like that was a choice that she made. But how much of that is coming to terms with the mistakes that she made and that she had, a good life in theory, and then decided to just sort of ruin it and
So with
self-sabotage, and how
her,
much of that is sort of performative?
yeah, like so I feel like for her, she definitely had some her own decisions and everything, and she almost in the book it played it off of I cheated on my husband because I was grieving my mom and had improper coping mechanisms. And I will say there is psychological studies that show that some people, the way they react when they lose control is that the only thing they can control is their body. And so they will have unprotected encounters and such. We've done Game of Thrones, but I still try to keep it PG. But they'll have unprotected encounters and such, and it's uh kind of a thing that's done. Not that everybody does it, because it's all about what are your coping mechanisms, what's your support system,
Hmm.
and um. And I know my husband and I, we've even had conversations because both of our parents are alive, and I'm like, unfortunately, it's going to happen someday. I want to make sure that we're there for each other in the way that we need. And we may not even know what we need, but I want to make sure we have the communication and such. So it's the only to answer your question specifically of how is she taking responsibility. I think it was finally like admitting to herself, like in her mind walking, and she's playing it over and over, all these different scenes, the horse, the her mother dying, even just in college, how she treated her mother when she was like, God, oh my God, the one scene where I was like, oh, and the mom
Oh,
just
the
let it
horse.
fall off her back like water on a duck was
Yeah.
when she told her mom, like, how does it feel that I'm more successful at my age than you were at my age? I'm like, what the
Who said that?
oh, and everything. Like, but I feel like by her replaying these things over and over, because I know in the book it seems like, yeah, this happened, but I know from someone who's gone on long walks and stuff, it is like leaving your phone on one thing on TikTok and that 1 minute just replaying over and over and over again. And I'm sure you felt it with running too when
Mm.
when you don't have music to distract yourself. And so I feel like that is her facing what she's done. Now in the book, totally forgot that she did opium again. But I do feel that there is a little bit of growth. Same thing with addicts with drinking and stuff. Like they sometimes drink again, you know, and it's what because they like it. Do you think they're getting better because they didn't swallow it? They spit it out the moment it touched their lips, and they're like, "Wait a second, what am I doing?"
Well, it's also the entire thing is she got into an unmarked van with a stranger and is like, "Oh, he's offering me drugs. That seems like a good idea."
The whole movie and book and everything, like going, "Hey,
Right.
I'm just gonna hop in with random people," and I'm like, "Why?
Yeah,
Don't do
I
it."
yeah, I think it's part of that is that we know that every step that you take closer to the thing that was, it's just that's more of a potential that it's going to go back off the rails. It's like you're tempting fate in a way that I feel like if you're a family member or loved one of that person, you don't want them to do anything that's going to tempt that fate. It's like we've seen this. We know what happens. You go to the van with the stranger first. Then they offer you like at what point are you going to stop it? So as someone from the outside looking in, that loved one, that family member, we're like, you see the van over there, don't go to the van. We're like, don't go to the van. And
Rule
you're like,
number one.
going to the van is fine. Getting in the van is fine. Holding the opium is fine. You know what I mean? And we're just screaming like, absolutely not. That is not okay. You know?
And Natalie, there's a huge difference between hitchhiking and getting into an unmarked van to say like, "Oh, I'm going, 10, 15 miles," versus, "Hey, there's this unmarked van which isn't going to move for a while." You can kind of make some assumptions about what's going to ensue.
She's been there before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just
It's
like when she met up with the guy that was hitting on her in one of the things, like when she got to her last box before she was going to hike the rest.
The sheriff?
And,
the guy with the package guy?
No. She didn't hook up with the sheriff.
No, she didn't hook up with him. No. I'm trying to.
She was the one that she hooked up with at the bar.
Oh, Joe, the
yeah. Like, but to me, that wasn't. At first, I was thinking, what are you doing? You kind of use this as a coping mechanism situation, but at the same time, having an intimacy is something that is natural for us. And so you kind of have to learn to do it in a healthy manner. And she at least got someone that was a little better vetted than the people she was hitchhiking with and such. Like, but at the same time, I almost saw it as a little bit of backsliding, just a little bit, because it was an impromptu.
Let's go ahead and get into our final thoughts. Was there anything that we may have missed? And this might be the mom in me, but I keep going back to like Ben's first point that always the danger of it. I feel like there were so many times when she's hitchhiking and it's that anyone who's doing it, not just her, not just because she's a girl, that you're putting yourself in such a dangerous position.
Like I would totally do this. Would totally do it myself, but I would have a lot more fail safes than she did.
Yeah.
And I would do a lot more research, and I would probably be packing personally.
Yeah, there are aspects of it that I honestly think I'm like, that would be kind of cool. But it's like you said, there are so many layers of preparations that would have to go into it. And like hitchhiking just wouldn't even be an option.
Oh yeah, that wouldn't be an option.
It wouldn't even be an option. So it'd be like another thing I'd have to work around. You know what I mean? The stops, the places I stopped at, if they would have to be shorter, like maybe stay out a day and I'd have to have a stop every couple of days because I need a bath. I know this about me. I'm not gonna. There are certain things that even though, and because I've been camping, I've been camping for days, 2 weeks at a time. I already know what my comfort level is, and I know it's about pushing yourself outside of your comfort. But I also know where my limit is. No matter how I'm already outside of my comfort, here is my limit. And just knowingly putting myself in danger is just not. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger. Unless I'm literally dying. It's not happening.
Yeah, I think that's the difference between Cheryl and the professionals is that the professionals know their limit. They've tested themselves already.
Mhm.
She never has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's that a little bit scary that, I mean, I guess and then I go back, I guess that's the point that she could have easily many times have died, and it's just that's it would have just happened. We wouldn't have gotten the story. But will people go in and think maybe these people who over prepare, maybe that's all they're doing is just over preparing. You can just go out there and walk it. And I know we all have to make our own decisions, but it is a little bit like, oh my gosh, like you could have gotten a fungus and lost your whole leg. You know what I mean? I live in North Carolina. This stuff happens all the time. We have to be cautious when they say if you're going to go to the lake, if you get a scratch, if you know what I mean, all of these things. So and I'm a little bit of a worrier. Yes, I have 4 kids who would in a minute. There's 3 of them who would do this. Like, sure, let's go grab a backpack. I'm like, you're not prepared. You just took a little backpack and you think you're ready to go because they're like, this sounds cool. And I'm just like, no, there are so many layers of preparation that have to happen. And I just see so many dangerous things, but there were times when it was made funny with the hobo guy, and it's just like, oh my gosh, and here's your hobo care package. And there are times when the guy is just very strange, and he turns out to be fine, but when he gets in the car and his shirt is like off, and he's just like, let's have a drink, and what kind of girl are you? Are you a fun girl? Are you a wild there? And it's just like my mind does not go to this person's fine. It goes to this could be a dangerous situation. And she's thinking it too, because she's looking around. She sees that he's got a gun and she's tense when he gets back in the car. I'm like, I can't imagine that this is what I'd have to go through every time I need to get somewhere. That I have to rely on somebody not being a mass murderer or just someone who's going to just go off the deep end if I say the wrong thing, because you don't know people. It's too much. Anybody else got any final thoughts? Oh, the funguses, yeah.
I know there is not a disclaimer on this book or even the movie, but anytime you see something where someone has survived through something, don't assume that you can do it too.
Yeah.
Like the one factor that we're not counting for that can't really be quantified is sheer dumb luck. Okay? Like even uh Maggie Smith says the line in the Harry Potter movies.
10
Oh,
points to Gryffindor.
like yeah, the points to Gryffindor for sheer dumb luck because first years were able to kill a troll, well, knock out a troll and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, by the way, the one of the websites I'm looking at, 16 people have passed away on the PCT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
That I'm
of those 16, I can't correlate it directly, but let's see here. So 6 of them have died since the movie came out, and then 9 over the past 30 years of the PCT tracking data. So I don't know. I'm not a statistician. But yeah, so it does seem like there is an increase in the number of deaths, but there's also a massive increase in the number of people doing the hikes, like
Yeah.
exponentially.
yeah, well, and
And
especially
the
women.
better equipment now that there are
Yeah,
equipment.
In
I'm just
theory.
saying, do your research. Like, there is so many sources. The internet has grown. Like, I will give it, Cheryl just had a book, okay? We're talking 95. AOL was around, but it was slow. And it
You had
was
to
either
listen to the music
AOL
to
or a
get
horse,
on.
and her family chose a horse. So, yeah, just do your research. I feel like, but I still think it's a good story, and I hope Cheryl has grown as a person. I would think so since hiking. I think it was. I don't think the end of the PCT was the end of her growth for sure. I think it's.
Oh yeah, she was
She was an
24,
addict.
25 at the end of it.
Some maybe
She's
26.
Was she 22 when her mom got sick and died? No.
Oh, damn. Okay, look
And
this
then
up
it
real
was
quick.
4 years between. She was in college. Her mom was in college.
Okay,
hadn't
she was
graduated
born in 68.
68.
So, yeah. So 78 is 10, 88 is 20. So it would have been 7 years, 27
Hmm.
Yeah,
in
because I'm
95.
thinking she was 22. She hadn't graduated yet when her mom died. She was a senior, maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So she was around 22, and then there was a 4-year period where things were spiraling for her, and then she did the hike.
Yeah. Yeah. So she was
But in her
27
20s,
in 95.
yeah. Reading Richard's comment.
Okay. So Richard, to explain fatalities, we're talking about people who may have read the book Wild about a woman who hiked the PCT, the Pacific, I always say
Coast?
Coast Trail, but it's
Mhm.
this is something
Give
else.
me 1 second.
Yeah.
For the exact name.
Yeah. But this woman did it without any preparation. Somehow she survived and wrote a book about it, which is the book Wild. And it's all about resiliency and stuff and perseverance. But at the same time, now there's people who have gone out since the book's release. Not sure if we can correlate it directly to the book or the movie. Crest Trail, not Coast,
Crest Trail.
Pacific Crest Trail. Um, but there's people who have gone out since the release of the book slash movie where they are dead.
Yeah.
And not to mention probably the number of injuries.
Mhm.
The
And
injuries concern me. And I think they showed it in the movie. They didn't exactly say it, but there are a little bit of pretty privilege that was going on when she met the guy to get her package. He had already locked up. He was like, absolutely not. But I'll open up if you have a drink with me. And then
and
the
if
3
you
guys
see a
come in
picture of
right after
Cheryl,
her. And
if you see a picture of Cheryl, she's not bad looking, like
yeah,
the real person. Like I understand why she got the trail name that she did.
yeah. So yeah, and then you have and I don't know if it's her being a woman, I don't know, but the fact that the guy is like, "I'll open up if you have a drink with me," and then she's able to talk him into letting the other guys come in after and get their packages, and then
I'm
he's
kind of
bringing
glad they
her
cut that
coffee and
scene
a donut.
down
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it would have been completely awkward watching that scene. It was awkward reading it. I'm like, oh, cringe.
Mhm.
absolutely. So there were a lot of things where it's like, you have the guys at the camp that she met there, and they're like, nobody brings us coffee and donuts. There were a lot of things that you're like, how did she get away with some of this stuff, but it worked out for her. She was able to do it. She got out of it safe, lost a few nails, got some bumps and bruises, and a little hungry. Didn't have water a couple times. That water, oh my gosh, I'd have
So
lost my mind if I'd have showed up and there was no water.
I do wish they actually kept that her filter got stopped up because to me that's like an important aspect of why she is struggling with water that because she couldn't get any more.
Mm. Oh
So,
yeah,
but in the book it got stopped up because of the creeper dudes.
Yeah.
creeper dudes.
So,
Scariest
yeah,
part of the whole thing.
yeah. I just felt the final thought was disclaimer. Like
Yes,
we're in an age now. There's no excuse to not do research. Honestly,
yes.
well, there is, but
Have
it's
a
called
solid
laziness.
plan. Have a solid plan. But yes, does it look interesting? Does it look fun? Does she make you feel like, hey, I could do that? Yeah. But do your research, folks. Look into
Mhm.
it. Really understand what could happen. You could lose some nails or more. So we're going to wrap it up. We're going to let you guys know that we're going to do Polar Express next month. So very
Yay.
excited. 'Tis the season. It's going to be a lot of fun. Um, and I believe we're going to have a guest with us. I got to double check the date to make sure that it is good for our guest. and then we'll let you guys know. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out with me to do this. Always a pleasure. And thank you guys who came in the chat. And if you come later on the replay, let us know. Have you watched Wild? Does this make you interested in watching? Let us know. I'm going to let you guys close it out. Ben, then Natalie, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. Ben Pick, Running to Write, every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see you there. This coming Monday, I'll be talking about poetry. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I'll be talking about taste, or writing about taste in our stories.
Yes.
Yes. I am Natalie Locke. I genre hop through flash fiction with my cohort Chandra author, and she and I have a writing prompt book, being released next summer, June 2024. So stay tuned for that because guess what? There's stickers. We always like stickers.
Yeah, stickers are cool. And I'm Nia the Vixen of Fiction. You can catch me on Tuesday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. And you can catch me on Twitch on Mondays and Fridays in the middle of the day for some live writing sprints or reading or any type of productivity that you want to do. That's what we're here for. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. And until next month, bye.